We are igniting the blockchain. I am your host, Elizabeth. Join me and my guests as we talk about everything related to cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. Nothing we say is legal advice or investment advice. Do your own research. Have fun and let's get started. This is Elizabeth, otherwise known as the Crypto Woman. Joining me today is Diane Imas. She is currently the Director of Brand and Content at Tika Solutions. Diane is a blockchain marketer, and I've enjoyed talking with her about the challenges specific to the cryptocurrency and blockchain industry. How are you doing today, Diane?
I'm doing very well, Elizabeth. How are you?
I'm doing well too. I am doing well. You and I talked last week during Consensus Week, and that was really intense. And since then, I've read a couple articles about how fatiguing these video conferences and face-to-face conversations online can be. And I never thought they were fatiguing because I did them a lot. But the last few weeks, when I've been so excited about being everywhere in the world at once without a plane ticket and taking advantage of all these webinars, it has really tired me. So.
I know. I mean, I can't tell you how much I've been hearing this, especially from folks in our industry, marketing, PR, etc. You know, they're just zoomed out, as they say. And it's interesting because I'm seeing that, you know, there is so much content, and especially for B2B businesses, because I think it's really important, not just for blockchain that's already decentralized, already distributed, already online, but even for other businesses in the financial services and B2B space. You know, they've always kind of done things with webinars to educate their audiences and bring in specialized clients that are in their industries. But now more than ever, you're just seeing an influx of all this amazing content. And I think people are getting overwhelmed, frankly. So we're just in this position where we kind of need to, you know, either differentiate ourselves in the way that we do bring these things to life and have these webinars, or people will just eventually tune out. And that's what you're seeing in this sort of fatigued kind of environment, because I think that while it's going to be great, we're going to get lost in the shuffle. So I think this is going to continue to innovate. We'll see new and different ways that people are going to try to bring information to the world and actually, you know, showcase a lot of what they do as companies.
Well, and that's what you do. You help us showcase what we need to do. So
Indeed.
When did you start marketing in the blockchain space, and how did you get involved?
I've started my career actually in investor relations and moved into PR and kind of was squarely focused in the financial services and fintech space. So while I was at a company called Cognito Media, which is a global PR and marketing firm that is specific to fintech, I started to really get a glimpse of Bitcoin, and I was, for lack of a better term, bit by the Bitcoin bug back in 2017. And then I just sort of started seeing the proliferation of all of this and how it was going to just change our lives as we know it. You know, the idea of having a new store of value being compared to, you know, what was going on in the .com era of the internet was just really fascinating to me. And I've always followed industries that were innovative and going to make our lives more interesting and more efficient and just more trustworthy. That idea of trust was just so lacking at that time. You know, given what we went through with the financial crisis back in 2008, it was just people did not trust banks. They did not trust the financial system, and for good reason. So it was just coming really, really at a good time. You know, it was all the things kind of were serendipitous to what came through with Bitcoin and blockchain and the technology itself. So at that period, back in 2017, maybe early 2018, you know, I brought some new business in the blockchain space. I had joined an ICO company at that time, and I really just took a leap of faith, so to speak, in joining a company and an industry that I was still learning about. You know, I was constantly learning new things every single day as I joined. And, you know, their focus, as was every other ICO's focus, was just to get in the media, get in front of eyeballs, get community engagement, right? because at that time in 2018, there was a huge boom of, all these ICO companies looking to raise money, right? Because they wanted to make sure that investors were going to invest, and they were going gangbusters, right? So they brought me on board to be their spokesperson here in the US, but also abroad, because they were focused in Asia, and they wanted to bring themselves forward into these new markets, and frankly to have those investor backings. So that's what I was tasked to do. And what's interesting is that back in 2018, there was an article that came out, I would say late 2018, from TechCrunch, originally from Breaker Magazine. If anyone knows, in the crypto or blockchain space, Breaker Magazine is quite a good publication, and they're very I guess accurate with the information. They treat themselves as real reporters, which we always appreciate in the industry as PR professionals. We want the real thing. But what was interesting is that TechCrunch came out with a piece that said that, over half of crypto news publications were pay for play. So in other words, a lot of the information that people were putting out there, they were paying for. And on top of that, there was no sponsored tags related to this, which is really interesting. And for lack of a better word, scammy, right? Because people were getting all of this quote unquote misinformation from a lot of these CEO interviews and just news articles that they thought were coming from real life reporters, but in actuality, they were getting paid something like $4,000, $5,000 or one BTC, for publishing that news. So 2018 was a really murky time for blockchain companies, especially as the ICOs came to pass. And I'm not writing them off, because obviously I joined the company, and I still believed in what they were trying to do, but there were so many scams out there that people just couldn't figure out how to make sense of it all. And media at that time was not helping it. So
do you think media has improved? I know from my experience with some smaller platforms and projects, trying to get the word out was difficult, because it's hard to come up with 1 Bitcoin per article or to justify that in the pay-to-play space. So you just don't get that recognition. So is that changing in your opinion?
I do believe that it is, because we're thinking about news and media, and it's their job to bring truth to light. So it wasn't long before people started catching on to what was going on. So obviously, a lot of the publications were really cleaning up their act, and a lot of the ones that were guilty of such things like CryptoVest and BTC Manager and News BTC, all of those kind of blogs and news media, they had to, adjust and adapt to the idea that people were not going to start believing what they were writing if this was the case. And it was, so I think, in 2019 and even early 2020, I think we're seeing a huge shift in the way that the media is treating a lot of these companies. They're being very careful. They're getting second sources. They're not just, interviewing companies and just putting that news out there. So I think right now the cream always rises to the top, right? And the same goes for the blockchain and crypto news industry. So you are seeing companies come out there, like The Block, right? This is fairly new, but they're former reporters that actually started this publication, and they're doing their jobs to find truth, and they are real truth seekers and doing the right thing by publishing news free of any pay for plays, outside of, what you would normally think about subscription-based journalism, which is not unlike the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, right? So they're doing things the right way. And same with CoinDesk. I think CoinDesk has always kind of stayed above the fray when it came to this kind of thing. But, there was always rumors going around about certain reporters or what have you. But I do think for the most part, those two publications are doing a good job in reporting the right type of news. And I mean, if you look at lists right now, there's some top 3, I would say, publications. CoinDesk still remains number 1, and then Cointelegraph is, I would say, number 2 or 3. But I think that they have changed. I think at some point Cointelegraph did ask for money for press releases, let's just say. And I don't think they do that any longer, because it's it's not a best practice, and it's not what people want to read. They don't want to read news that is being paid for, or if a company has a lot of investor cash, they don't want to be duped, right? Like, we're always so skeptical now because we've been trained to be this way, that it's almost like refreshing to see that now finally news media is coming to a whole new kind of set of values and ideals that we can actually begin to trust.
Okay, let's just imagine that I'm a little project and I want to get the word out. And how do I do that? Is there a place where I post my press releases that crypto and blockchain journalists go to first? Is there a way that I get on the radar?
So I would look at it as, treat yourself like any other small company, regardless if you are in the blockchain or crypto space, right? The way you do it is go to Business Wire, PR Newswire, Globe's Newswire, and publish a press release, and it will be featured on Yahoo Finance. And then you will have other media pick that up, like news aggregators, right? You'll hopefully appear on Market Watch or other channels that can feature this, and perhaps other Bitcoin blogs, but you will be featured as a press release, right? It won't be masked as news that is original content, right? It will be featured as a press release. So that's how I would see it, is, treat yourself like a regular company, right? Blockchain and crypto shouldn't be any different from that, right? And if you do have a good PR person, you would have them speak to the right type of reporters and pitch them like they would any other company. So I think that is what they should do. And what I would say is it's, obviously more challenging in this space, right? We're still quite nascent, and there's not enough publications out there that are interested or truly understand the space to cover it. You're seeing a lot of kind of crypto focused and blockchain focused reporters in different publications like Fortune and Forbes and Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal. And of course, they're dealing with, an influx of pitches from different blockchain companies, and they themselves need to identify whether this is a project that they could pursue because they've previously never dealt with this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So it's quite challenging just as an industry to break through right now because, we need to wait for media and reporters to become more educated about these topics. And I think they're trying, and I think it's moving quickly, right? I think that we are adapting, and we are seeing more and more reporters come to the forefront and actually know what they're talking about and writing about that. But there's still green, right? So we can't really expect too much at this moment. And I do think it is a struggle for smaller blockchain companies, and that's why I think they have to be more creative than just go to the press, right? They need to do their own type of and take it internally and look at different marketing tactics to put their names out there, right? Whether it's social media or virtual events or anything really. But I think that we need to branch out into digital media kind of tactics to do this sort of thing.
Well, there are a lot of favorites among those social media platforms. Which ones do you like best for blockchain and crypto?
So I will just mention, because I can't go without not mentioning it, but I think the most popular right now for crypto and blockchain are going to remain Reddit, Telegram, Discord, right? Those are the specific to blockchain ones. But it all depends on your audience. Who do you want to reach? Do you want to reach other blockchain enthusiasts or folks that are already in the industry? Or do you want to reach a whole nother sector of audiences like, the financial services industry? Do you want to reach, CIOs and perhaps CEOs? It really just depends where you want to be. So if, let's say I'm a financial services or capital markets blockchain company, I'm not going to necessarily use those channels. I will probably, lean toward LinkedIn type of advertising, or perhaps do LinkedIn Lives, right, to get the attention of people, right? Because we are seeing that those channels are a little bit more effective, and maybe perhaps Facebook and Google advertisements, right, to support some of this organic stuff that I'm doing. So yeah, it just depends on the channel. It depends on who you want to reach. I think that blogs are in a lot of ways effective too. If you can speak to Harvest Daily Digest and be featured there. A lot of asset management companies use that channel, right? That's what I think, because you do want to be taken seriously by people and folks outside of your industry, right? Not just speaking within a vacuum, right? Speaking to your own kind of groups.
And that happens so often. We speak to the choir in the crypto community often when we're trying to talk about a project that we want to take to the broader masses. And
exactly,
the platforms you mentioned are suspect for that. Definitely. It's kind of like, we have cryptocurrency and we have blockchain. And the people who talk about cryptocurrency only think about cryptocurrency and trading and prices. And the people who are talking about the technology are often talking about the projects and the development and where this is going to take us. And I think we can find different platforms that focus on different ones of those things too. But I can't keep up with the spam and I can't sort through it.
You know what? It's funny that you mentioned that, because I'm really good friends with a lot of communications professionals in the space. And I've heard that the same exact thing. And, these are legitimate companies. These are companies that have business, are profitable. And they're saying that, we've actually never had a Telegram because we've never needed one. And what we found is that somebody impersonated them and actually created a handle with their logo, with their company name, and started trying to, take, clients or try to create business on the platform. And it was just awful, right? Because they had to, go to Telegram, and multiple times they had to speak to their representatives to get this blocked, this account, removed, because there's not enough safeguards in place to actually prove that this person is who they say they are within Telegram. And that's the issue, right? You use a phone number that is, and you create a name, and if it's not claimed, then you can impersonate anyone, which is, going against everything we believe in when it comes to blockchain.
When you talk about taking unclaimed names, some people just vary the spelling of the name a little tiny bit. And they've done that for me before, both as a crypto woman and in a company that I used to own years ago. They impersonated my company name and caused real damage to me. They just represented it as a very, very, very immature and poor personage. And it used my avatar and very slight variation on my on the spelling, and it was very difficult for me to get it taken down by Twitter. I had to send all kinds of documentation, including, the formation of my business and when I did it, and all kinds of offline verification that I was who I said I was. And eventually they did take it down. I've documented it with a lot of screenshots. I think it's a little bit easier now. I've also been impersonated more recently, and it seemed not to take quite so much background work, but it's not fun. And it's bad marketing and PR slam on somebody who's trying to build up a digital reputation.
Such a shame that you had to go through that. And, you work so hard in building your brand and your business. And it's, it's something that you take pride in, and just to see that kind of being taken away, or at least attempted to be that, is really tough. And so, I'm really sorry to hear that, but it's not the first time, and Twitter of all places, right? Like Twitter is just, it's almost the foundation of blockchain in speaking what you're feeling, speaking your mind. It's, if you're not on Twitter, and I failed to mention this before, but Twitter is so huge, right? The blockchain community on Twitter is huge, right? Crypto Twitter, as we like to call it, is just massive, right? So it's horrible to even see that, because people just, latch on to anything that anybody says on there, right? But it is funny that you mentioned this, because there are certain companies that are, certain blockchain companies that are trying to prevent this sort of thing from happening. And one of them is called Althea AI. So they're a synthetic media marketplace, and they're trying to actually educate the world about deep fakes and AI generated media. So it's almost similar to what you're doing, but they're using an AI-powered technology to combat something like this. And they're actually partnered with Oasis Labs, which is a privacy software company, I think backed by Andreessen Horowitz. And they, because it's such a problem that I think that we absolutely need to find a solution. And you don't have to look too far, not even within blockchain, but even with, the upcoming election, right? I can, all this fake news that is coming about, so it's really interesting that, we have to fight so hard to make sure that we're keeping our names in check, and that our brands aren't suffering for all the fraud that's going on. Because, frankly speaking, I don't even know what the purpose is of these impersonations, because eventually the companies will find out. And it's almost like you went through the trouble of impersonating with nothing to show for it. Like what could have even come from this?
For my business, my company years ago, I have no clue. I absolutely have no clue. When they revealed the name of the person to me, I didn't even know that person's name. For the crypto woman, I believe it was to spread false information in my name. And there is something to that. If people don't look carefully, especially when they swipe your image, your avatar, and repost with that, right? So we do have to be careful. And I guess that's just another thing that we should say to the average reader is be really, really careful who you're reading. Make sure it really is who you think it is before you repost or believe.
Absolutely. It's like you have to do so much more due diligence in this industry than you have to do anywhere else. Because that's just the name of the game. And because we're so nascent, you're going to see fraudsters. It's just the way that it goes. And I think that you've seen a lot of that obviously happen during the ICO boom. And, because with anonymity comes a lot of just bad actors, right? And that will be the case no matter, what type of industry you're in. So, I think that the idea of the blockchain media and just, making sure that you're reading things carefully, like making sure that you trust the reporters, that you're seeing other sources is really key, right? Don't just believe something based on one article. Make sure that there are other articles that support these things, right? So that's just a few ways to do it. And, if you're still skeptical, I would also just reach out to the company and see, just do your own homework yourself, right? Especially if you're an investor, and any investors listening, never just invest in anything based on news. I would, make sure that you have a conversation with the founders, make sure that you have all those questions answered. Even if you are a retail investor, right? Even if you're not putting too much money behind it, you just never know. And I think companies will do their part to give you the information that you're requesting, because they do want your support. And if you're if you're somebody that is serious about this industry, you're going to have to do your homework at least, So it's something that we all need to think about collectively.
Diane, what are you doing right now in this space? What are you working on?
I was just recently with a company called Prometheum, which is a blockchain securities company. And now with Tika Solutions, we're actually in the process of speaking to a number of different projects that are looking to go to market and find ways that they can bring their solutions to light in new and innovative and creative ways. And I think right now more than ever, they're looking to us for digital media solutions and digital kind of marketing kind of ways to put themselves out there, not just through social media, but how can they automate their systems? How could they, use analytics to be a little bit more mindful of where their customers go and how they interact with them? So, all of these are kind of in the works. Stay tuned. You guys can visit my company and I'm actually Kirti's company too, at www.tikaco.com, and reach out to us. But we are definitely open to speaking with different blockchain companies. We are actually industry agnostic. We're not focused on the blockchain space, but because we have that experience, we absolutely love to serve our friends in this space. And then on top of that, what I should mention is that I am the New York City community partner at the FinTech Connector. And a lot of our members, a lot are from the blockchain and crypto world, and we are there to connect with one another and to try to match innovators and enablers, whether they're looking for, companies that they want to invest in or have, questions about how to move forward in their kind of journeys. We are kind of that bridge, right, to make impact in the fintech industry. And so that is probably a lot more blockchain and crypto focused. So, it's free to join at the moment. And if you guys want to get involved, I have a lot of kind of things on my LinkedIn page that show how you can join and become a member. But yeah, a lot of our events speak to the blockchain and crypto community. So it's a lot of educational stuff there too. So
we'll be sure to put that information in the show notes. But that brings me to a point that we didn't talk about yet. That's part of this marketing space, and that's networking.
Yeah.
And the social media platforms give us a shoe in to making those connections with people around the world that we might not otherwise. But how important is networking in this space?
I think it's everything right now. I think it's, the people that were there since the beginning, like the founders of different projects, they just created teams based on who they knew from their own personal networks, and they just built it, driven by passion, but almost like, let's just pull whoever we think is capable of doing this and just go, right? We were moving a mile a minute. We're still seeing this now, but I think networking is so important because, you're not going to take anyone from the outside world and just, put them into a project, because it's a lot of work, right? There's a lot that goes into, helping market a crypto company, because it is so much harder than regular industries. So you need to just trust that person has the, at least whatever knowledge they have, even if it is limited by way of having just a couple of years in the space, but can do this job. Right? Because it's not just let's hire anyone. And I think that, blockchain companies were challenged in the past to get the right types of people in the door. And, in a lot of cases, they crashed and burned because they hire people in really large positions in the financial services industry. And they didn't quite get how to, work inside of a blockchain company, because it was so fast moving and because it was different from a lot of what they saw in the past. So yeah, networking is key. And I think that because, blockchain started with all of the events, right? How did people even get to know a blockchain event? It was because there was thousands of conferences out there that people were starting to attend. And I think naturally we just started networking with everybody we could just to learn more, because we were so voracious for information. So it was birthed out of networking. So I think that holds true even today. If you know somebody that knows somebody that could be good for this type of role, you're going to recommend them, and that's how they get in. It's pretty, you're seeing this now where there are still public postings for jobs. But personally speaking, I have a good, idea that a lot of these people are actually taking people that they know within the company to work at these positions. And of course they want to do their homework, and they want to make sure that they're interviewing everybody. But, the large and short of it is that they're still probably, working with internal folks that they can trust. So,
when I try to put somebody on a team of a project that I'm advising or working on myself, I tend to go to people I know, or people who know somebody that I trust, because you are trusting people with some important things here in the crypto space. It's not just exposing them to the typical box. For instance, if you're going to be a developer in this space, you might have access to private keys. And I've heard of people taking off with private keys before. So you have to be really careful. And that brings me to another thing. When we do our networking as individuals or as companies, we need to put our best foot forward, always, in any industry, right? But in the crypto industry, there's a few barriers that we have to overcome. Identification with cryptocurrency doesn't need to be negative, but a lot of times it is negative, sometimes because of the ICOs and that fiasco that we had a couple years ago, or going back even further to when the main reason it was known was because of like Silk Road and dark web activity. How do we overcome that?
It's a good question, because I strongly believe that nobody should have access access to private keys or any, really private and secure information that is outside of the shareholders or founders of the company. So any of that, IP related info, and that, I hate to say it, but that goes for the same thing goes for other traditional companies, right? You don't want to put very sensitive information into the hands of people that you can't absolutely trust and people that don't have skin in the game, right? So I think that, as is the case with any company, you put contracts in place, you make sure that only certain people are privy to certain information. And, you just hope that you can grow a company based on that, loyalty and support. And I think that also goes back to the genetic makeup of a company, right? It's still very important to make sure that you create a foundation of values within your company that your employees are all supporting, right? You're not going to hire employees that you feel that aren't going to have integrity, right? You hire people based on their characters, and you make sure that you have a culture that breeds folks that are loyal to you and want to grow the company and don't have any ill will toward their own kind of agendas, right? So I think that it's really important to be smart about who you hire, to protect your IP, right? And also to just be kind of aware, right? We need to be self-aware, and we need to know that what goes on. We can't be founders of companies, and especially not blockchain companies, not knowing what goes on inside of our organization, no matter how big we grow. So it's really important to have that, those skills as a founder. And I think, while there are many that don't have this, but the companies that will survive and succeed are the ones that are able to have those leadership traits, and can instill those values within their company and to their greater community and employees.
And how would a company present themselves to the broader world? Adoption is a big buzzword right now in our community. We want to get ourselves out there. We want to be understood, and we want to be well received. How do we present ourselves?
To be quite honest, I think it's just be truthful, be transparent as much as you can. Over communicating is, I think, the best policy. And, for the most part, I am not, I've seen this happen a lot, but don't hype yourselves up if you don't have anything to show for it, right? I've seen it time and time again where companies are talking a big game. They're doing these events, they're creating all of this hype, and they have no actual product, right? They're either still in development or they're still actually, building some things. I would say, build quietly, right? Do this, keep this under wraps, and until you have something to really show for it. And the first, words that you say, you want to make sure that they are actually meaningful, that they are about something. And that's how you create adoption, because the greater world and the global community is not going to take blockchain seriously if this continues to happen, where there's just all these smoke and mirrors type of activity happening, right? So I think it's up to us, and it's our responsibility as projects and blockchain kind of founders to only really bring forth tangible products and solutions to the world, right? We can't just blow all of this information and put it out there without having anything to show for it, right? And that's what I think will help us move forward, because adoption is such a question mark, I think, for so many people. And people are saying, well, I don't see this happening, and it's been around for so long, so probably never going to happen, right? So that is what we're battling right now. It's an uphill battle to get people to support a lot of these projects that, are really, really, really good. There is something there, but we can't just be frivolous in the way that we talk about ourselves. So I think that's going to be the important factor of adoption and moving forward, and just getting support, frankly, because, we have ideas and we could create something great, but we're never going to get that to come to fruition if we don't have investors backing us, right? And that's the case with all startups. So it's really important that, investors can look at us Now, and not just the ones that have been around forever, right? Not just blockchain capital, not just Andreessen Horowitz and all those guys, but we need to get even traditional investors to take a look at blockchain and be like, oh, this is really cool. This is really something that's gonna, make an impact. So yeah, I think just try to be as honest and transparent as possible.
Those were really good words, because the flip side of that, the smoke and mirrors, the hype, the talking about what could be or would be, and that never comes to pass, is actually doing the whole industry a lot of harm.
Right.
Because you're right. When people look into this space, they want to see things happening. Those words that you said, it's been around a long time, but we don't see anything yet. And that's because so many people are talking and not actually showing. Diane, it's been really, really enlightening hearing your take on the blockchain industry from a marketing and PR perspective. I wish you well and hope that you find many blockchain projects to work with, because it sounds like you could bring a lot of talent to projects and help move them forward. And we'll put your contact information in the show notes. And is there any last word that you would like to say before we sign off?
Yeah, I guess I just want to say that, this industry has been a whirlwind. And what I would encourage other listeners is that, don't believe everything that you hear. Do your homework, get involved, try to get some Bitcoin in your account. There's no time like the present to diversify your portfolios, or even just be a first-time investor to just get to know what this is like, because there's just a lot of hype, as we say, going around. So it's good to practice what you preach, so to speak.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Check out ignitingtheblockchain.com for materials referenced during this podcast, and for a list of other conversations about blockchain technology and cryptocurrency. See you around the block.